So, All the Bright Places isn't exactly a movie that I would normally review, but my wife wanted to watch it because she's a fan of the book, and so I watched it. And here are my thoughts. Warning though, this is going to have some spoilers. So, All the Bright Places is just kind of like a cute little movie. You know the type of thing it is, like the typical kind of teenage thing that's based on John Green books, things like, what's that? Paper Towns, and sort of like The Fault in Our Stars. It's one of those sorts of movies, and I can kind of get into those. It's kind of cute, it's kind of quirky. But one problem that I always have with these sorts of movies is that it's full of teenagers that don't speak like real people. Like, they speak in these crazy, complicated metaphors. They speak in all these kinds of terms that I just don't buy teenagers kind of speaking in. You know, they don't swear. They just go on about how vast the universe is, and it's beautiful, and I'm a star, and you're a star, and we shine brighter than... I don't know, they say shit like that, right? And it just doesn't always feel that realistic to me, though. I will acknowledge that these sorts of movies aren't exactly made for me anymore. I've kind of grown out of this genre a little bit, so when I watch these movies and I hear that kind of cringy dialogue, it kind of takes me out of it. But I do have to say, actually, in All the Bright Places, I didn't find that bad. I actually did buy into the characters. They didn't use too many terms that were just kind of unbelievable for teenagers to use. They didn't really swear all that much, but there was some in there. It was kind of like an edgier version of one of those movies, and I don't know, I kind of like that aspect to it. It did feel a little bit more grounded in that way. Another thing that a lot of these movies always do, well, not always, but usually do, is explore mental health and mental illness and depression, anxiety, you know, whatever else the movie chooses to focus on specifically. Those sorts of themes are often in these sorts of teenage movies and stuff. And I think that that's a good thing because it like raises awareness and all that stuff. But in that way, I do have to say that these sorts of movies also hold this heavy kind of responsibility in that they chose to bring those topics up. And sometimes I feel like they don't take their stories in the most mature ways regarding those themes. And I feel like All the Bright Places does suffer in that regard. Yeah, this is where I'm going to get into spoilers. My biggest problem with this movie is that I think that it kind of romanticizes suicide and mental illness. I think that a lot of movies about these sorts of themes often do. I do have to give it props though, because I also think that it does shed light on males having these sorts of issues as well. Often in these kinds of movies, it's a girl who kind of has these issues or whatever, or if it's not, it's a guy and then they meet some perfect girl who fixes him. It's always about fixing each other. There's that term that goes around in these sorts of movies, the manic pixie dream girl, which is this common trope that people have a real problem with, where it's this girl who doesn't really have any real personality and is just there to fix the protagonist and make them realize how great they are or whatever. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a girl. It can be both genders, but just generally it's a girl, and that's kind of where the term comes from. In that being said, so we start the movie off with this girl, Violet, who is contemplating suicide, and the main male character is going for a night run, a seemingly harmless night run. And the character, Theodore, sees her, and they talk, and he saves her from her attempted suicide. Now, throughout the movie, their relationship develops, and Theodore sort of fixes Violet, as if a mental illness is something that can just be fixed by having fun, having a better outlook. And look, having a better outlook definitely can help, and can definitely... I don't know how to word it. It's a complicated topic, you know? I don't want to say the wrong thing. I just feel like... it's not that easy a fix, these sorts of issues, and just showing somebody respect and showing somebody that they can have fun can be a massive help and can be a really good step, but I don't think is like the final answer. But regardless, I did like that he sort of helped her, because it often feels like in a lot of other movies that it's the other way around, and it's always a guy who meets some perfect girl who helps him, and it's all about him and his life, and now he's okay. I do like that it kind of swapped. I do also like that Theodore is just as flawed as she is. I like that he isn't shown to be at first. That's an aspect that I actually really love about this. That, I mean, you know, going into it in the first 10, 20 minutes or whatever, it seems like Violet's the one that's like all not good and whatever. But really deep down, like, she was just being sentimental. She was visiting the place of her sister's death and she wasn't quite sure what she was doing. She was kind of confused. But really, when you get down to it, Theodore was the fucked up one. He was the one that, you know, had trauma in his childhood. He was the one that had all of these unlabeled diagnoses of mental illness and all that stuff. He's the one that's going to meetings and everything. He's the one that's really got the issues, I feel like, more so than Violet, who has issues and is depressed. I'm not taking that away from her, but I found it interesting that it was the male who had those issues, because I feel like that's not always focused on in society and in fiction. So I appreciate it for that. However, the movie ends with Theodore killing himself. And to me, it felt abrupt, and to me, it felt disingenuous. I knew that he had issues. I knew he wasn't exactly happy in all aspects in his life, but he didn't come off as suicidal to me. Now, my wife has told me in the book that's because the movie missed many, many details that the book had. And I feel like that's a big issue with this movie, that it kind of assumes that you know this information that the movie isn't giving you. It kind of feels like it's made for book fans who have this prior knowledge going in. However, is also going to piss off book fans the most because they know all of the missing information. This is a bookcase example of a movie missing many, many, many necessities that the story really needs in order to be full and well told. From what I hear, I haven't read the book. But regardless, he was fucked up, and it's not always obvious. There are many examples in real life all the time of people who, you know, you never saw it coming. They seemed happy, they were the one that smiled the most at parties and whatever, and they kill themselves, and it's a tragedy and it's horrible. And I don't know, that does ring true. I just don't think that the movie quite explained it well enough. It kind of came out of nowhere in the way that the movie was portraying everything. I don't think it did the best job of explaining all the finer details that you sort of needed to understand the character and what he was going through. Regardless though, after that, they're at his funeral and stuff, and then she goes to one of the places that they visited, Violet, obviously. And she finds a message that says that he was here, which is one of the cute things that they said earlier in the movie. And apparently in the book, Violet visits many more places after where he's left messages for her and stuff. And it's like this cute journey that she goes on that, you know, makes her grow as a character, and she kind of learns from it. But in the movie, it's only one place where she gets a message. And so that whole kind of message is lost. But also, I noticed that she sees this message that he leaves and she smiles. And for me, in that moment, I was just thinking, this movie is for teenagers, right? And she sees this thing and she smiles even though he's dead. And it's like, so he still has a positive outlook. He still impacts the world positively. And I'm just thinking, not to be rude or anything, but like, I feel like he shouldn't anymore. I feel like if this movie wants to warn the truths of mental illness and suicide to like teenagers and stuff, then it shouldn't be shedding a positive light on suicide and showing that there can still be good from it. Suicide is just a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it romanticizes that aspect, that side of things, and makes it look like a thing where you're still gonna be able to have this positive impact on the world even when you're dead and stuff. And like, I don't want to say you're not gonna have a positive impact ever. Like I said, this is a complicated topic, but I just feel like it's a heavy responsibility for a movie to bring these topics up and discuss them, especially for young audiences, and then kind of brush over the finer details of what suicide really means. Like, it doesn't show his suicide at all, for one, which I'm not saying it should have particularly. I'm not saying I would have loved the movie way more if I saw a kid die, but I'm just saying, like, you don't see the ugliness to it as much as I think you should. It just kind of gives you this happy, quirky music, and then she's alright at the end because he fixed her in their relationship when he was alive. And I feel like it's not quite as balanced, and I don't know. I just feel like it should have done more with that. Does that make sense? That being said, I thought the movie was cute enough to hold itself over. I did kind of enjoy it, to be honest. It's not anything I haven't seen before, but I don't know, it had kind of a fun soundtrack, and it looked pretty good for like what I assume was a pretty low budget movie. I thought the actors did pretty well. I like the character of Theodore quite a lot. even if I didn't feel like he was always fully fleshed out and there were lots of details missing, I did still like him as a person, if that makes sense. But again, from what I hear, compared to the book, this movie is just useless. And I believe that. You know, a lot of people always say that the book is always better than the movie. Being me, I'm not sure I always agree, but in this case, it really seems like it. Okay, that's all. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and all that stuff, and watch my other videos. I would appreciate it. Thanks. Goodbye.